Is it important to understand what the price to earnings ratio is, and is it overly complicated? Let's find out. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese, and today's video, I'm going to be talking about the price to earnings ratio, which is also known as a PE ratio. The whole idea behind a PE ratio is to identify how expensive a company's shares are. As an example, a PE ratio of 5 would mean that the current market value of a company is equal to 5 times its annual income. In the real world, this translates to if you were somehow able to purchase 100% of a company's shares, it would take 5 years for you to earn back your initial investment through the company's future profits. For investors, the PE ratio is simply a tool to get an understanding of a company's value in terms of the cost per share versus how much the company earns. Now, there are two main variations of the PE ratio, and they are known as the forward and trailing PE ratios. The forward PE ratio is calculated by using a company's future earnings as a guide, so it really is an estimate. And the reason why investors use it is to get an idea and a comparison to how a company is performing now compared to what it is expected to do, how it is expected to perform in the future. The problem with projecting ahead is that it's really difficult to get an accurate estimate or an accurate number of how a company will perform because there are so many inputs into how a company operates. And that's where we move into what a trailing PE ratio is. And it's calculated by looking at data from past performance to get this number. This usually gives a much more objective number, and that's because the numbers that they're using to calculate this PE ratio is based off of actual information. Actual data that is available and ready to go. The same issue, however, with the trailing PE ratio is that past performance definitely does not indicate how a company will perform in the future. This is the trouble with both of these PE ratios, being the forward and the trailing, because they are estimates. They are the best guess possible based on either existing data or how people think a company will perform in the future. So how is it calculated? Let's do a quick calculation to show the actual process. It's pretty simple and there's not many inputs. The equation is very simple. All you need to do is take the market value per share and you need to divide that by the value per share generated by that company. To find the market value per share, this is just the share price. You can literally Google the company you want to find the share price of and then follow it up by share price. That's as simple as it is. To find the earnings per share, this might be a little bit tougher to dig up, but again, this is publicly available knowledge. You should be able to Google the company, type in your question, and get started on that journey. It shouldn't be too hard to find. So for my example today, I'm going to use a very small company known as Apple, just for the sake of the example. The share price at the time of recording this video for Apple is $173 USD. Let's use their trailing earnings per share over the past 12 months, which I simply Googled to find as well, which ended in September of 2021, and it was $5.62. So when we plug in the market share price of $173 and divide that by the earnings per share of $5.62, we get a PE ratio of 30.8. Remember that this is not a dollar value, it is just a number on its own. There's no units on this number. 30.8 is the PE ratio. This means that it would take you about 30 years for you to earn back your initial investment through the company's future profits. So now that you know how to calculate the PE ratio and what it's showing you, what are you supposed to do with it? Simply put, you can use the PE ratio to compare companies who have commonalities in the products they sell and the services they provide. For example, two very similar tech companies or two very similar energy companies. After calculating the PE ratios for both companies, you'll be able to use it as a guide to determine which one would make a better investment. If two competing companies had similar PE ratios, you could say that the company with the lower PE ratio would be cheaper to invest in. That would be because every dollar you invest in them would be cheaper for every dollar that the company earns. As a disclaimer though, it is incredibly important to understand that the PE ratio is only one of many metrics which are used to evaluate a company as to whether or not it would make a good investment. Every company is different in how they operate, how they generate income, what the products they sell or the services they provide are, and this changes every single day based on which A-list celebrity is talking about their products at any given time. The price to earnings ratio honestly isn't that great of a tool. It definitely does not give you a clear-cut indication on what would make this company in particular be a good investment. It is simply a guide that some investors choose to use, some don't. And just before I wrap up today's video, just as some additional information, investors will sometimes say that it's a better idea to invest in a company with a lower PE ratio. However, this is not always the case. This is where you can get caught out. If a company is operating at a loss and has been doing so for a really long time, this could be a clear indicator that the company might be going bust. This is where the PE ratio is really good in terms of how it can make you do some extra research into understanding why a company is valued the way it is. A company like Apple definitely has those earnings to back its PE ratio. It's a very high PE ratio in my own opinion. And this is where having an understanding of how a company performs, why a company is being valued the way it is where you can draw a PE ratio from and go, okay, I can see why it's low. They haven't made a profit for 10 years and that's why that PE ratio is really low. That's a bad example because PE ratios aren't calculated when companies don't earn money. But the point that I'm trying to make is just gaining the understanding of why a company is valued the way it is where you want to be going with your research, not just basing it off of a number that is plugging two different values in, which don't really give you an accurate indicator on if a company would make a good investment. And I know that was a bit of a mouthful, but that's brought me to the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something new. It was a bit of a dry topic, but it's definitely one that's worth understanding. With that being said, I'm pretty much going to leave you there. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below. Really helps the channel out, really helps it grow, and I really do appreciate the support. And with that being said, have a good day, have a good week, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.